My name's Melanie Bott. I'd like to call this Planning Commission on March 27th, 2025 to begin. I'd also like to seat Commissioner Graham this evening. Thank you for being here. And then we have Elise Nelson with us as well. We're going to start with a prayer by Commissioner Elise Nelson. And then we'll have the pledge by Lily Graham, and we'll go from there.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for all of our many blessings. We're grateful for the beautiful community that we live in, and we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to meet together. Pray, Heavenly Father, that Thou will watch over and bless this meeting, that all can go as it should. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. If you could please join me in the pledge. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So our first item on tonight's agenda is our consent agenda are considered routine in nature, and they don't require a discussion or independent action. One motion may be used to approve all items on the consent agenda. We're going to start with the meetings from the January 23rd, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. Do you have a motion?
So both of these items would be just approved in one motion,
Okay.
unless you have questions.
Oh, gotcha.
I motion for them to be approved.
And I second it.
All in favor of approving?
Aye.
Okay. So then we'll move to our public hearing. We'll begin with number 3 on our agenda. It's the consideration of a request to rezone approximately 7.3 acres of property located at 795 South Main Street from A2 to RA1 with a concept plan for 4 new 1-acre lots. The applicant is Grace Huffaker. And we'll turn the time over to Jenny from the city.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. As a little bit of background, the applicant owns 4 separate parcels here for a total of 8.3 acres. And it includes a 1-acre lot that's zoned RA1, located at 795 South Main. It has an existing home on the parcel. An approximately 2.7-acre lot zoned A2, located behind that house at 795 South Main. It's currently vacant land. A 2.3-acre lot zoned A2, located at 99 East, 900 South. It has an existing home and is lot number 8 of the Maple Farms Estates. And the last parcel is a 2-acre lot zoned A2, located directly east of 99 East, 900 South. It's a vacant lot. It's lots number 7 of the Maple Farms Estates. This here shows you the map of the 4 parcels. If you look over on the screen behind you guys, sorry, the pointer doesn't work on the TV. But over here, these 2 parcels, this one, this back one, and this one, they both front Main Street. And then these are the 2 that are in the Maple Farms Estates that front 900 South. All right, this is the existing zoning in the area. You can see that the purple section right there and the ones above it, all of the purple is designated as RA1, and the green section is A2. The general plan shows that the whole parcel or combined parcels that they're proposing to be zoned as low-density residential, and then the green area is rural residential. What's unique about this general plan is that it includes the 2 parcels in the Mapleton Farms Estates, as shown here. This means that while the rest of Maple Farms Estates remains 2-acre lots, lots 7 and 8 are the only 2 in the development that have the potential to be rezoned. All right, the application requests a rezone for a total of 7.3 acres from A2 to RA2. The concept plan submitted by the applicant includes leaving the home located at 795 South Main on a 1-acre lot, the construction of a new road, which would be located on the north side of 795 South Main parcel and will head east, allowing for 2 new 1-acre lots. They are proposing leaving the home on Lot 8, which is currently 2.3 acres in size, and subdividing Lot 7 into 2 1-acre lots. In the general plan, goal number 2 is to focus on large lot residential uses. Policy 2.1 is to maintain and protect established neighborhoods. The staff supports the rezone of the vacant property behind 795 South Main, but it's for the commission members to discuss the rezoning of the 2 lots in the Maple Farms estate. We want you to discuss whether it's is it in conflict with the policy of protecting established neighborhoods. The remaining lots in the Maple Farms estates would not be eligible for subdivision, so just these 2 would. The applicant has submitted a concept plan showing 4 new 1-acre parcels. At this time, the commission is not approving the subdivision, only the rezone. If the rezone is approved, the applicant will be required to submit a formal subdivision application. In the staff report, it was noted that as part of the subdivision process, some issues will need to be resolved between the applicant and the neighbor to the north. So this is the proposed concept of the land. This is the house that they're keeping on the 2 acres. This is the home that they're keeping on the 795 South Main. This is the road that would go through to these 2 new lots in that proposed vacant land to the rear of 795 South. And then this is lot number 8, this is lot number 7, and this is kind of the one that's questionable being divided. So that's what we want you guys to discuss. We've had some correspondence about this. We've had 4 letters in support of the rezone and 1 that's been raising concerns. Did I? Yeah. Okay, that was it. I thought I had more on that one. I'm sorry. And then from us, we recommend approval of the rezone of the 2.3 acres to the city council. And it's up to you guys to determine whether the request to rezone lots 7 and 8 is consistent with the general plan. All right.
Thank you for that. Excuse me. At this time, we're going to open it up to public hearing. There's quite a few of us here, so if we can keep them brief and to about 3 minutes or less.
Let's have that, if you want to ask if the applicant wants to speak first.
Oh, I apologize.
Do that.
Is the applicant here this evening? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Stephen Lord with Elevate Engineering, representing the Huff Acres. Grateful to be here tonight. Really, Jenny did a great job explaining what the Huff Acres are trying to do here. Like was mentioned already, it's consistent with the general plan. The boundaries there are supportive of what was done by Landmark a few years ago. And we're just looking for those 1-acre lots. The Huff Acres would love to have their kids be able to live in Mapleton and around them, and the 1-acre lots make it a little easier for that to happen, and their grandkids. So I'll let it go to public comment, and then if I can be involved in discussion, if you've got any questions for us, then we're happy to. Mel and Grace Huffaker are here too. If they want to speak, we'll allow them to do that. But if not, we'll just go public comment, and then I'll answer your questions. Thank you.
I actually sent in one of the letters. My name's Tom James. I live across the street from lot number 7, and I'm part of the Maple Farms estate. And my concern is that when I moved into Maple Farms estate, the whole subdivision, which was platted and recorded and sold as 2-acre lots, should all stay at 2-acre lots. I'm assuming that the zone change was made after the after the subdivision was made, and I'm assuming it was just a mistake that they went right down to the street of 9th South instead of putting it behind the lot of the subdivision. It seems to me like that would make more sense. Also, it seems to me like if you change a subdivision that's been plotted, sold, everything, that everyone in the subdivision should approve that unanimously if they're going to make a change to a subdivision that's already been there and built. I know that subdivision, I think, was done in 1980 or so, so it's been there a long time. It's been established for a long time. I think the zoning's probably was put in that R1 from the A2 or whatever it is, was done after that. So those are my concerns on that subdivision, that it devalues our property, I believe, by putting that in there. And then it also just changes the neighborhood that we moved into.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the road that was going in there. Is that going to be a city road? And if so, isn't it right next to the next door property to the north? I'm curious about if that's going to be partly going into their property, or is it completely on this side of the property line?
Yeah, so the way the roads work when you're developing and a road goes on a property line is the applicant's responsible for half of the width plus 7 feet. And then if and when this property develops and ties onto that, they then build the remaining little bit less than half of the road.
Okay, so there's no obligation for that neighbor to build the road yet until
No.
they subdivide?
No,
Okay.
yep.
And it will be a city road?
It would, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
Guys make me nervous. So I'm Esther Brophy, the 3 acres along the north side there. And I think this could be a good thing, but also maybe not so good, I don't know. But it would literally put our house exactly in the corner of 2 roads, which I don't know if that's the best. And then our 40 by 80 steel building, I think, is going to be about 10 feet from the road, maybe. It's right on the road. So those are kind of some things I was thinking about. My other question is, if they develop this and we don't, I've been told that we have to change our driveway, would have to come in on the new road. So if they develop it and we don't develop our 3 acres, does our driveway still have to come in off of the new road, or can it stay where it's at? That's my question.
Yeah, the location of the driveway will ultimately be determined by UDOT, since Main Street is a UDOT road. But they typically would require that if the applicant is putting in this road, to work with you to eliminate that, so there's not the conflict. So in order for the subdivision to move forward, they're going to have to work with you on that little remainder piece and determining that,
So whether we,
that driveway.
sorry, whether we develop, like, even if we just keep it as 3 acres, if they develop it, we will have to change our driveway,
Most likely.
take out the trees, the bushes, and all that.
Most likely, but again, that ultimately, until they actually apply, I don't know if, Stephen, if you've had any discussions with UDOT on it yet? I can talk to that. Okay, perfect.
Okay. And then the other thing is, because we're right now exactly 3 acres, so I hate to get down to 2.9 and then not have dividable lots, but it is kind of a wash, though, with that little bit of strip that we gain might be equal to the strip we lose right there. So that was my other
Yeah.
question, was that?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Esther.
I'll make this short because Stephen's going to get into it more seriously. Our neighbors who are friends, and we love dearly all of our neighbors, we're not intending to ruin anything. I know you've always wanted a nice green field there and have had it since 1979, 49 years. But as far as the worry of if we get it done, then everybody else in the subdivision will want to do it. Well, that's not the plan of the city. The city hired professionals to come in and analyze all of the zoning throughout Mapleton, And they came up with the idea that everything from 900 South, including Chad Warren's across the street, and ours down to the Maple, should be A1. That's what you paid them to tell you. We have been a farm all this time since we bought in 1979. Mel is 87 years old. He's a heck of a man, but he's getting tired. And I don't know when we're going to do anything as far as a road or anything else. It's not affordable to us right now, but we do want to get the rezoning, and we want to honor the company that was hired by the city that said this is what we should do. I know that Shelley and TJ are concerned because they live right across the street, and they don't like the idea of having two homes there on 1 acre each. But if you drive through the subdivision, you'll find a mansion and a gigantic house, a gigantic barn, or a huge warehouse, or something else like that. So we could put up one house and a gigantic warehouse on the other side. So is that prettier than just two houses, and they're not going to be mansions or huge? They're just for our kids that are in their 60s and 65 to 66 years old. They're not going to build an enormous house. So that shouldn't be blocking anybody's view. But I'll let Stephen handle it from here out.
I'm not actually here for this, but Cherie Kilpack, I just have a couple questions. So remind me what the new deal is with, would this be considered a flag lot then? And don't they need a turnaround for a fire truck, or will that eventually go through somewhere else?
Yeah, no, they're not flag lots. They'd have frontage on the road, and they would have to have a temporary turnaround on
Okay.
this lot. But those things would be addressed when the subdivision plan gets proposed, but
Is there plans though for it to continue and go somewhere
yeah,
else?
it would
You
connect
don't
here.
have, do you have the big picture so people can see what that actually will look like in the future if
So
it
this
did?
is the lake, Maple Lakes
Oh,
Drive.
gotcha.
So it'll loop in there and go out to Maple Street.
So that's where, it would go north?
Yeah.
Not further east? Okay. I think that was all my questions. Okay. Just curious, thanks.
Thanks, Sri.
How long do we want to go down?
Just ask if there's any more.
Are there any other comments, questions?
No, then
All right.
close the public hearing.
We'll close the public hearing at this time, and we will open up comments from
Questions,
our
comments?
commissioners.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can talk to UDOT if you want me to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'll talk to a couple of things. So we did have conversations with UDOT, and again, what I want to be careful of is focusing too much on the plan. I think I came up with a good plan, but it's a concept plan, just to show that there's the possibility of fitting the lots on the space, and to show that that's viable. As far as fully engineered plans, we don't have those yet. We don't intend to have those. We have to do the rezone first. So where driveways will be, temporary turnarounds, things like that, that would all come out in the wash with a full subdivision application. And obviously, we would have to comply with all of the city requirements and the engineering requirements to make that happen. And we're committed to doing that at such time that there is a subdivision application. As far as the UDOT conversation goes, the reason for what you see there, the jog, what I would call the jog in that road along the north, is the access spacing requirements UDOT has between the road that goes out to the west there
This one.
and our street. Ideally, we'd like to just come straight along the property line, but UDOT was not okay with that from an access spacing standpoint. Now, I don't know if this is still on the cards. Sean, maybe you can talk to it, but there's been a lot of talk on this street that it's probably the weirdest UDOT road in the state. And I know UDOT's interested in not owning it anymore, and there's been discussion about the city taking over the jurisdiction of SR14, I can't remember what it is, Main Street. And in that case, the access requirements change, so it's possible that access changes at some point anyway. The road is master planned, it's on the city's master plan, so eventually that as things develop, that road's going to go on there. I'll talk maybe a little bit about the concern with the property to the north. There's no change in the property line there. So the road isn't going to get any closer to the accessory structure than the property line is currently, with whatever the Huffacres decide to do. Now, obviously, if there was some participation and somebody would come in and wanted to develop that 3-acre piece north of us, then that might change. But with this proposal and with the rezone, then it doesn't get any closer. Property line doesn't move. One thing maybe to note, and Grace wanted me to make sure we talked about this, that there are no deed restrictions in this subdivision. So there's no reason legally with the subdivision restrictions that it couldn't be rezoned. Obviously, it's an administrative decision, or it's legislative in nature, so it's up to your discretion. But with the general plan and the fact there are no deed restrictions, it's certainly viable, possible. It's in the corner of the subdivision, it's not right in the middle. And like was mentioned before, I understand the concern of, well, if the Huffacres do it, then everybody in the subdivision can do it. Well, that's not consistent with the general plan, so that would require a different discussion, in my opinion. I think that's really it. I'll answer questions. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I think that hits most of the points. Grace, did I miss anything? Okay, I put her on the spot. I think we got everything. So that's, yeah, up to you guys. S- Do you want to talk to that, Sean?
Well,
or do you want
yeah,
to talk to it?
as Stephen mentioned, this is a concept, but I think Esther, as we had discussed, what he's showing their building does not go onto your property. If you developed, then you would be finishing the rest of the road that would most likely take some of that property.
Half of the road goes up to my, half road goes right.
Half plus 7.
7 feet.
Half plus 7.
Yeah. Half the width plus 7 feet will be on their property, and then the remainder would be on yours.
So she's saying if it takes a little bit of her property, then she has less than 3 acres, so she couldn't subdivide into 3 different, if she wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, with the public hearing being closed, and with the subdivision really, as we've mentioned, will come at a later time. This is meant to show you what they intend to do. And you certainly, if there are questions on the concept plan that you want the applicant to address before they bring it back, the commission can certainly direct them to do that. But this really is the focus of the rezone proposal. Okay, thanks, Steve.
I have a comment, yes. Just as far as my feeling on all of this, I agree with the staff in terms of how I don't like the idea of the rezoning of the lot 7 and 8. I'm personally a victim of the city telling me one thing and then later on changing their mind and doing something else. I think it's really, really wrong to say, I'm selling this land, I've subdivided it, I've developed it, and all the lots have been sold based on those terms, and then later on down the road change the terms. I'm very passionate about that, actually. So I personally think that those 2 lots should not be changed. I think they should have to stay in the A2 as they were originally designed. I don't think, unless you have unanimous consent of all the neighbors, all the people in the subdivision, that should be permitted ever. And I'm very passionate about that.
And just one comment for the commissioners as you discuss this. Because there's 3 of us, we do need a unanimous decision. If you can't come to any unanimous decision, it would get continued and brought back at the next meeting when the commission would be full. So just so you're aware of that.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on that. I think the issue is that it's in the general plan to have these smaller lots. It is unfortunate that it is in a community that's existing that says requirements of the A2, the larger lots, but it is in the general plan, and I think that's where we kind of need to look at that difference, that it is different than the other lots.
Was the general plan developed after the subdivision was developed?
Yeah, the general plan that actually, the boundaries of the general plan have not changed since probably early 2010, somewhere in there. When we updated the general plan in 2020, we did update the general plan, but this section was not changed. It just remained. When you're thinking of the general plan, right, when the community's going through a general plan, you're looking at a big picture. The reason that zoning isn't guaranteed is because you then narrow down and focus in on sections like we're doing now, right? If the general plan was a guarantee, then there would be no reason to apply for a rezone. So the commission does have the discretion to look at it and say, okay, is there some reason the general plan doesn't make sense here, and go from there. But you can also rely on the general plan to say, yes, it's part of the general plan, therefore we think it's appropriate. So you certainly have the discretion to look at this either way.
So did you say initially that that lot 7 and 8, was it part of the rural, was it rural at one point in time? Like the other zoning, the green zoning? When did that
So
change to the
if you
purple
look, if you
zoning?
look at this is the actual zoning map, so everything around it is green.
Okay.
Most of it, right? The general plan is saying, in the future, this is how we see the zoning going, and that's what this is they see that
That's where it's gonna go.
the 1 acre does continue a little bit south and then out to the west.
And we
there.
don't know the reason why they bumped that up to that.
No, the easy answer is we assume that they just went to a roadway, and then because it was running south here, they just kept that line consistent rather than having a jog. But, you can look at it either way. It is a consistency from 9th South north would be the same, you'd have the same zoning, and then south would be the same, but.
Okay, I see.
So do we,
Yep, you can ask for a motion if you don't have further changes.
so, do we have a motion for the consideration to rezone from A2 to RA1 for this area?
I will say no.
You can motion to readdress it, yeah.
So there's a couple of options, right?
What am I supposed to
You
say?
you could recommend approval of the rezone of the 2.3 acres, which is the portion that's not part of the subdivision, and then recommend denial of the rezone of the existing lots 7 and 8, if you want to. That's a
No,
motion.
that's
you can
exactly
make.
what I would say. So I would recommend the rezone of the 2.3 acres and not recommend the rezone of lots 7 and 8.
Okay, yep.
And I second that.
So we have a motion to recommend the approval of the rezone of the 2.3 acres to the city council, and then readdress the rezoning of 7 and 8. Is that correct?
To not recommend approval.
To not recommend approval. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Perfect, so that motion carries. So the city council meeting is April 9th. So anyone that's interested in coming to the public hearing, and will be April 9th, unless that doesn't work for Huff Acres, we can
we'll figure
follow
it
up
out.
with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
All right, the second item on the public hearing is the consideration of ordinance amending Mapleton City Code Title 18 regarding standards for residential accessory buildings.
Okay.
And we'll
Thank
turn it
you.
over to the staff.
Yep, thank you, members of the commission. So the city has seen a pretty significant increase in requests for accessory buildings and more very large accessory buildings. You've seen them in town. People are building barns, they're building pools, sports courts are becoming very popular, pickleball courts, accessory apartments. So we've definitely seen a big increase in accessory buildings. Recently, there was a pretty large accessory building that was built in a rear yard in a neighborhood, and some of the neighbors were concerned about the impacts of the accessory building on their enjoyment of their property. And as they expressed those concerns to us and we looked at it, the building in question met all the standards, and so it's approved, and we're not discussing that particular project tonight, but it did cause us to say, let's relook at these standards, and maybe there is a need to pull back a little bit on the allowances for some of these accessory buildings that, as I mentioned, are getting larger and larger, seems like every day. So these are, you drive around town, these are similar examples of very large buildings that you see, or a variety of buildings from barns to shops to accessory buildings to garages, apartments, barns, indoor riding arenas, those types of things that you're seeing, quite a bit in the city. The current standards generally allow up to 30% of your rear yard could be covered in buildings, whether that's one building or multiple buildings. If you're less than 15 feet tall, you can be as close as 3 feet to your side and rear property lines. If you're 15 to generally 40 feet is what's allowed in most zones, you can be as close as 10 feet to a side and a rear property line. And so what we're proposing as we've looked at this is we certainly want to continue to allow people to have the property right to be able to enjoy their property. And part of the charm and part of the desire of coming to Mapleton is you have these large lots and you can build these types of structures. But as we looked at it, our recommendation is to reduce the allowance in the rear yard from 30% to 20%. But I think more importantly, our proposal is for structures that are over 24 feet tall, that they should have to comply with the same side and rear property, or side and rear setbacks as the main house. So right now, you could have a house that has to be 25 feet from a rear property line at 40 feet, but you can have an accessory building at 40 feet at 10 feet from a property line, right? So we think this is a better consideration to continue to allow property rights, but also to consider the impacts of neighbors. So if you look at the back on the screen, just kind of an illustration of what we're talking about. Currently, you can do a building as close as 3 feet if it's less than 15 feet tall. We're not proposing any changes to that at this point. But we are proposing that if you're between 15 and 24 feet, 10 feet is as close as you can be to your side and your rear. And then if you're 24 feet, over 24 feet, you'd have to be at least 25 feet back from that rear property line. So that's what we're proposing, and we're here to receive feedback from the public and from the commission, and then for you to make a recommendation to the city council.
Thank you. We'll open it to public. Will you come to the microphone?
Is there some way to make exception to if it is bordering like a street, where the 25-foot setback would not, where it's not infringing on neighbors' views or whatever? Because I'm just thinking for a lot of buildings, if you've got it 25 feet, that might be dead center in the back of the backyard. It actually may infringe more on the neighbor's view if it could be moved toward the road, if there's no neighbor on that bordering side. I don't know if there's a way to specify, make it that specific, but it seems like it would actually avoid some issues.
Yeah, so the corner, if this was a corner, you'd have a street here and a street here. In those cases, even now, accessory buildings have to comply with the standard front setback, which is actually 30 feet in most zones. We would recommend continuing to require that setback, so from a street view, you're not getting buildings that are too close to the street, but it's certainly something the commission is welcome to discuss.
And that's a line of sight issue for traffic, correct?
It's certainly the closer you are to the corner, yes. Mhm.
Okay, Cherie Kilpack again. I think that.
You miss being on the
I
commission.
know,
don't
I
you?
really,
That's
I'm
the-
just
that's
looking for
what this
any
is all
excuse to come back and get as close to this bench as possible. I think overall, I think the idea is good. I guess, tell me, 24 feet, is that the height of a normal Rambler, say?
Probably fairly close. Mhm.
So a one-story home could still be, or a one-story outbuilding or something could still be 10 feet.
You could do a two-story accessory building at 24 feet, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you could. It
Yeah.
could be 2 stories still.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's something we should still look at then, because I don't think you should be able to have anything 2-story that close to the line. It just seems like you need to have a buffer. Maybe if there's not another property or a dwelling or another, I would say a dwelling, a home within so many feet that it's going to obstruct views or get in the way of, maybe then it doesn't matter. Because if it's another barn, who cares? If it's a shed, who cares? But if it's a home, I don't think that that's far enough. only because I am experiencing that right now. And I think even, I don't know how tall is that building? Anyone?
It's 28. Yeah, it's close to 30, that one.
Oh, yeah, you would know. So, sorry, Sean. So, I got two Seans. My husband's a Sean too, so both Seans know. I think that's still too close. I think 20 feet, I think like 15 feet should be up to 15 feet, 20 feet. Or, yeah, 10 feet. And then anything over 15 should be more. I don't know if you've seen the picture.
I drove by.
Okay, thank you. It's just too freaking close. It's very uncomfortable, and it just changes the whole landscape. And not just me and the surrounding neighbors, but other neighbors too. It just changes the whole feel of that whole section of our neighborhood. So, and so then that leads me to my next item of business, and that would be CCNRs. And I know that the general consensus in cities is that they don't govern CCNRs. But I do think that if that's not something to do with tonight, we need to talk about the fact that that should be a part of the building permit process. And we didn't know, and Rance just came tonight, and sorry, Rance, I guess I'll say it. Now we have officially got Rance and one other guy in our neighborhood as a contact. We didn't know we needed that. Obviously, we don't have an HOA. We just have CCNRs. But we have CCNRs, and we want those held up. And everybody, we thought everybody in our neighborhood knows about those, and these people bought the house, and they claim that they didn't know there were CCNRs. So, yes, they're big boy and girl, they should have figured that out. But at the same time, if nobody told them and they didn't do their due diligence, hopefully it comes to the city and there's some oversight there and that plan B. And the city has a checkbox, and if they don't know who to talk to, then they'll go figure it out. At that point, put the burden, still doesn't have to have the burden on the city. It can just be at least a checkbox. And then the owner has to go figure out who to talk to and get either a waiver from the neighbors or get it approved. And then you won't ever have this problem again. So I think between those two things, I don't know, Sean, how does that work? How do we get that handled? Because that.
Well, we'll take all public comments and then we'll address the questions.
Oh, okay. Is that something that can go on tonight as a recommendation?
I can make some comments on it, but yeah, and if there's something they want to recommend, they could.
That would be awesome. I mean, because of that problem, now, obviously, the Alvies hate me because I'm like, the spokesperson, one of the spokespeople, and they're not happy with this, but it could have been all avoided with a simple checkbox. I think that's basically it. I think it should still be further away for up to 15 feet. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think we got it.
Yeah. Anyway, the city has all the power. I wish we would have known that what they were doing back there, but we had no idea until it was too late. And the city did know, so the city should be able to, help mitigate those types of things before they happen again. Okay, I think I'm done. I might come back if I think of something else.
Bob Friel. I live next door to Cherie. And Lily, thank you for driving by and looking at that building. That's my house that's in the backyard of that.
Oh, okay.
And we moved in 16 years ago. Liked the 1 acre lots. Appreciated your talking about protecting residential properties, which you absolutely failed to do in this case. I found it interesting what you call an accessory building, and I wonder how you define that, because this building clearly was not a basketball court. It's not a recreational property. It's an industrial building. It's a metal building. How many square feet is it, Mr. Conroy? Is that 10,000, 8,000 square feet?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's probably
About
8.
10,000 square feet in my backyard. And that's what you see when you walk out, you look at my kitchen window or you walk out of my deck, is that building. The CCRs clearly would prohibit that building. When I called and asked about the CCRs, I was told that you don't care at all about CCRs. That's between us and them. Cherie was exactly right. Had you had the courtesy of notifying us, I understand you're on a committee with Cherie and you know her fairly well. Why couldn't we have received the courtesy of just saying, hey, we're considering a permit for an industrial building in a residential neighborhood? And we could have stopped that at that point in time. So this is really nice and it's good, but it's late. It's damage control for us. It affects my property value and my quality of life. And it could have been stopped very easily with a little bit of courtesy. People that owned that property before had a dog grooming business there, and the city required them to go around to all of the neighbors and get a sign off for a 10 by 24 sign saying Farley's Dog Grooming in the front yard, okay? But somehow or another, you put a 10,000 square foot metal industrial building in our backyard with no consideration of anybody here,
So this
no one
evening,
in the neighborhood.
we're just addressing the option, right, to make the changes. So when we're not specifically speaking about property lines or specific buildings, we're just making the recommendation or discussing the recommendation to change the code. So,
Mapleton City approved the CCRs for this subdivision and every other subdivision there. You've completely invalidated those CCRs. They're of no value anymore. You set a precedent, and it not only affects Monte Vista, but it affects every other subdivision in this city. There's no protection for us anymore. That's why we bought that lot, which is a huge disappointment. I don't know how to make it any more clear than that. I think a little courtesy could have done that. And you say, well, it fit the current zoning requirements. Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. A call would have stopped this issue and this problem and saved a major, Monte Vista is very upset. The whole subdivision is, and it's not going to be the same. This was a major travesty, I think, as far as the city and what's been done here. I'm very disappointed. That would be an understatement. There is some legal liability there. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir.
So Rance Hutchings. I just wanted to thank the commission for looking at different setbacks. I think this is a really good step in the right direction. So I'm on the architectural committee, so I'm pulled in all directions over this situation. So I agree that there needs to be changes with setbacks, especially I like the height, so that was good to see. I would agree with Cherie that perhaps 25 feet is still too tall to be a 10-foot setback. I'm okay with 3 feet setbacks for 15 feet tall. I mean, we have a neighbor that has, a little lawn shed that's less than 200 square feet, right? Those things, that seems appropriate to me. It doesn't really bother our line of sight. But I think 25 feet will. One thing that I think that would be, and I don't know if it's in this particular, zoning ordinance or somewhere else, but we do have issues with when it's permitted for a residential area and then it's used for industrial, it's a potential falsify. This is the one that they're speaking about is only one of 2 in our neighborhood. The second was never permitted. And so the question is, what is the teeth in the ordinances that would allow the city to go in and say, this building doesn't have a permit, it must come down? Or this was permitted residential, but clearly it's being used for an industrial purpose. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's this ordinance, like if that's something that can be added to this ordinance, or if that's a totally different ordinance that may need to be looked at.
Perfect. I'll address that.
Those
for
are
you.
my comments on this.
Great.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm Mac Corey, moved here just a few years ago. I totally sympathize, actually. I'm really in agreement. It's just by coincidence that I'm building something that I've been working on. Jake Lake's designing it, and I submitted it today, not even knowing about this. He was the one that told me, hey, you know, which I don't have any problem with my neighbors, because I'm in like a gully, kind of, right? I'm over Eagle Rock, you know. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is we don't have any privacy even in our whole lot, because the road comes down, right? So this building that I'm building, which I guess my opinion is that I think if maybe even just getting rid of metal buildings, as far as approving metal buildings, I don't think that should be something that should be allowed, right? The building that we're building is absolutely beautiful, lots of dimension. It is kind of a sports court for my kids. I have 6 kids. But I think, you know, in all reality, the public would agree that if people are notified, right? I mean, I know that my neighbors would have no problem with it. In fact, it doesn't obstruct anybody's view. But I think that should be in there, right? I don't think that it should be a blanket where you say, hey, the building cannot have this height, that cannot, whatever. It should really be a case by case, because, I mean, we started designing this back in May of 2024, and literally just got everything done on Monday, right? And so, but like I said, I totally agree. I mean, I would be really upset if I saw that picture too. I thought, wow, I don't know what I would do. But again, I think that a lot of it has to do with the beauty of a building, as well as, you know, what's obstructing, as well as the neighbors. So I think that's really everything I had. But I guess my question is, am I in jeopardy here with my building that I just submitted?
Jake actually sent me those plans a few days ago, and I reviewed them based on this standard, and you're still okay.
Okay.
It's close, because it's a beautiful building, but it's close, but it does meet the standard. Either way, until an ordinance is adopted, whatever submitted before would not be subject to the new standards.
I figured that. I just thought I'd ask. Just my curiosity, because like I said, I'm new in the area, and I was a builder in Oregon, but would it be something where you just, within 2,500 feet, you just have to ask people to go? For example, if this got changed and maybe my sister lives, whatever, she wants to build an accessory structure, would she just have to say, hey, does the city allow it to where people around are notified, and then she could build something that was to today's standards? Or is it just like set, where once you guys change it, that's it?
Yeah, once the ordinance is in place, any application would need to follow those standards.
And there's no variance?
Correct. Yeah, variances have to be based on some physical hardship of a lot being uniquely challenged, that the standards make it so you can't build. So
Okay.
typically variances, just because a neighbor is supportive of it, would not be an option. But
So I guess my last question is, if this, I mean, obviously this is not affecting me personally, but I am curious about this. Couldn't we make it so where you guys approve where it's based on a potential variance? If, and, you know, for example, if I happen to do this a year from now, I'd be kind of upset, because right now we don't have privacy. Like there's, you know, like 80 feet, right, where people drive down and they can see every part of our backyard, even though we have a big yard. I'm just saying, can we put that in there so that there's some sort of compromise, instead of, oh, nope, you know, that's it, right? Because in certain lots, nobody would care, right? Is that possible?
I suppose it's possible. There's some complications to it, but I think probably let's continue to have questions, and I'll try to address them all, including
Okay.
that for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have any other comments, questions? Okay.
I would just say, piggybacking on that, but it just for an example, it seems like there should be some residential standards, because look at the Wiggy Wash that just, or Quick Pack, sorry, whoo, that was fast. Quick Pack that just went in. That is more beautiful than this, and it's commercial. And the Maverick, actually, I would rather have the Maverick in my backyard than this, because it actually has stone. So you hold the even commercial, which this is seems like an industrial commercial building, but they're actually held to a higher standard. So there should be some standards for residential, like, yeah, like you say, if people just don't want that metal, ugly metal thing to look at. So.
Thank you for your
You
comments.
thought the Utah County would open up a new transfer station from the top of the street back on it. I mean, how do you not know that's what that is? Somebody's got to be looking at the plans and proving that permit. Is there, that is not a residential purpose for that building.
Thank you. We're going to close the public comments, and we're going to open it up to our commissioners for discussion and questions.
If you want, I can go through some of the questions that have been brought up, we'll go through the things that have been addressed. As far as CC&Rs, again, CC&Rs are private restrictions that are placed on property. The city is not a party to the CC&Rs. We do, when there is an active HOA that has requested from the city to provide them with information when an application has been made, we have done that. So Harvest Park has an active HOA, the Preserve, a couple others, that we will notify them. In this case, as they've mentioned, there has been no HOA, and so it didn't come up to even reach out because they have never reached out to us to ask us to alert them of those CC&Rs. So I absolutely understand the frustration, but from the city standpoint, there's never been a request that they be notified. CC&Rs have enforcement features adopted, and so those are open to whoever lives within those CC&Rs to take those enforcement actions. So those are still there and available. As far as the question regarding permitted uses, yes, if a building does not have a building permit, the city can enforce that. Typically, it's not the building gets torn down, it's that they apply for a permit, and if they meet the standards, they receive the permit. As far as uses go, if there is a use that's a commercial use in a residential zone, we absolutely can enforce that and often have to do that. And that's typically done through a citation that is then taken to a court. In situations like that, though, it's the use that's at risk, the use that's being challenged, not the building. So I'm not aware of a situation where a building has been used for a certain use, they've been asked to stop, and then they've had to tear down the building. That's not likely. It's just that it would have to be used for personal uses instead of business uses, if that makes sense. As far as design standards, that is something you can consider. State law in Utah says that you cannot have design standards for single-family homes. It doesn't state that for accessory buildings, so if the city wanted to do that, we could. The challenges you get into design standards is then who's enforcing that, and if it's aesthetics, what's pretty to one person is not necessarily pretty or attractive to another. So those can be challenging to do. But if the city wants to take that on, we absolutely could look into it. As far as notifying neighbors, another thing that's unique about Utah law is there are things that are considered administrative in nature. What that means is if an applicant applies and he meets the city standards, the city is obligated to issue the permit. We don't have the ability to say your neighbors are concerned or your neighbors don't like this or go get your neighbor's approval before we do it. We are obligated to issue the permit if they meet the standards. So that's why it's important to take a look at the standards and make sure the standards are what you want, because once those are in place, in fairness to everyone who is looking to build a building, they want to be able to have predictability, right? That if they meet the standards, they'll receive their permit. And so that's why it's important that we're evaluating this to say, okay, what are the standards that we want? And then whoever makes an application under those standards has a right to receive a permit if they meet those standards. Okay?
So this evening, we're just recommending there's a change, correct? We're not doing specifics. That's something that would come later.
So we have an application, a proposal, an ordinance, that if you can recommend approval of that ordinance to the council, you could recommend approval with modifications. One of the things that's been brought up is the setback, is the height allowing 24 or 25 feet within 10 feet too much? That's something you could make a recommendation as far as a change to the proposal.
I just have a thought on the height. I've got two people in my neighborhoods that have had one's really high. It feels really high and like completely blocks a view. Another one that is just, it's as big a structure, but they went in the ground. So it's not high. And I mean, is that something you could, I mean, is that something they could, it doesn't matter if they go down?
Correct, yeah, the height limit, so if you set a height limit, they can, as long
Or
as
even if
they-
it was like, say, 20 feet, they still could have the same height if they went down into the ground.
Potentially, yeah, if it was like a basement space.
Yeah, because, and then that one actually, I mean, it doesn't even, I mean, it doesn't block any, it doesn't obstruct anything. Also, is there on the back end of the lot, is there a certain setback that you've got to have from the back of the, you know?
Yeah,
So
so
you're
we're-
not just right on top of the neighbor behind you?
Yeah, typically for a home, it's 25 feet.
Okay.
And so that's
that's
why
a
we were
setback from the
recommending, the
back.
taller you get, you've got to meet that rear setback.
Okay,
The question is there a certain height that's appropriate closer than that? You know, if you're 10 feet, is 24 the right, or is it less than that?
So one of my thoughts is, and I know this would make it more complex, but could there be some kind of a variable? Because you can have something that's 24 feet tall, but it's not that big of a building, versus you're maximizing your 20%, then that 24 feet tall becomes huge. And maybe there can be some kind of a variable that doesn't just take into consideration the height, but also the square footage. How much of that percentage are they using? And the more of it they use, the more they have to increase the setback. I could see there being kind of a graph that says, okay, the bigger you're getting, then the more the setback is going to be required. I'd like to see something like that, I think, versus just a blanket, you know, you can do your 20% and you can be this tall. Because I drove by there yesterday. Yeah.
Big.
That would be really, really hard.
Yeah, absolutely, that's something we can consider.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion either way, like modifications?
Well, I would like to see a motion that allows for this to be reevaluated as far as the math. Because I think it needs to be, you know, on a scale. I don't think it should be absolute. I like the 20%. And for the most part, the heights I think are fine, but I think you need to take into account the mass of the building. And since that's
Yeah.
not presented here, I think it needs to be recalculated.
Can we do that?
So you can handle it a couple of ways. You could make that as a recommendation to the council, to have them consider, you know, what's proposed, or a sliding scale like that. Or you can continue it and ask us to make those changes and bring it back to the commission. Either way, it's, we could do it. We can certainly put together a concept of that would go to the council if you want to make a motion tonight to do that, or again, like I said, we can bring it back.
I don't know, I like the mass, but is the 20%, is that covering that mass? You know, the width of the building, is that,
That's what we would work on.
that's what's
as
covering
Lily's-
that right now?
Lily's proposal is how to scale that a little differently.
Okay.
I would propose that we continue it and come back to this meeting.
Have an
with-
option to look at.
With with the sliding scale.
Okay.
You second that?
Okay, I second that.
All right. All in favor of Lily's motion to reassess it, take it back to the city, and bring it back to us, correct, with
Yep.
those changes? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that'll do it. That's all your items for tonight.
Oh, I thought we had.
Thank you so much for being here, and we'll adjourn.
I guess the other ones will talk about the others.
Thank you very much. Thanks for making it, ladies.
Yes.
Keeping the meeting going. Thanks, everyone. We'll let you know on when it comes back to Planning Commission.
Said on that first one was exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, can we keep that one? I'm fine with them subdividing that back, but that is hard where all the whole neighborhood. So I was trying to figure out how to disagree with the one.